Look at this map. It's dated 1562, and it shows many sea monsters, mermaids and dragons, and giants in South America? You might think that it's because of the artist's good imagination, but actually, not quite. Yes, sea monsters and mermaids fill the empty water domain, but it was not customary to draw imaginary creatures on the Earth's surface. And if you look at the whole map, there are no other strange creatures drawn on the Earth's surface of the map, only giants. You might easily think that this is the artist's imagination, but no. Here is a map from 1634 by cartographer Willem Janszoon Blaeu, and it shows giants in the same region of South America. And this map was clearly drawn without artistic exaggeration and monsters. It's just sea lions, not mermaids. And this is not the last map of that age to show giants in this region. On this map in South America, there is even an inscription in Latin, Regio Gigantum, which actually translates as the region of giants. And this is not all the evidence that giants were encountered in South America in the 16th century. We are now going to explore how Fernand Magellan described his encounter with these enormous people. Why could the existence of giants on Earth be actually quite real? And why is it no longer possible to find them in South America? Let's start by telling you that this region is called Patagonia. And it's not really possible to translate this name one-on-one, but the region is also called Land of the Big Feet. The name of this region was given by Ferdinand Magellan, the Spanish and Portuguese seafarer who made the first voyage around the world in the history of mankind. Unfortunately, Magellan did not live to see his ships return to Europe. He was killed by Mactan natives in the Philippines. But his chronicler, Antonio Pigafetta, left these records from the journey. But one day, without anyone expecting it, we saw a giant who was on the shore, near today's Puerto San Julian, Argentina, quite naked, and who danced, leapt and sang. And while he sang, he threw sand and dust on his head. Our captain, Magellan, sent one of his men towards him, charging him to leap and sing like the other in order to reassure him and to show him friendship, which he did. Immediately the man of the ship, dancing, led this giant to a small island where the captain awaited him. And when he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid. And he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tall of us only came up to his waist. Withal, he was well proportioned. The captain named the people of this sort Pathagoni. Antonio writes that Magellan ordered his men to feed the giant with food and drink, and then made the mistake of showing him a mirror. Wherein, the giant seeing himself was greatly terrified, Pigafetta wrote, leaping back so that he threw 4 of our men to the ground. But once things calmed down, the explorers began to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunting with them, and even building a house to store provisions on the shore. After a few weeks living with the tribe, Magellan came up with a plan. He kidnapped 2 of them and took them back to Spain to prove that he had discovered the giants. But this was by a cunning trick, for otherwise the giants would have troubled some of our men. Magellan gave them all sorts of metal objects which they could fool around with, mirrors, scissors, bells, so that they wouldn't mind at all when he put handcuffs and chains on their feet, whereat these giants took great pleasure in seeing these fetters, but did not know where they had been put, and they were grieved that they could not take them in their hands, because their hands were already full of other trinkets. However, Magellan lost his evidence during the long journey back to Spain. The giants did not survive. Neither did Magellan. But Pigafetta brought back the legend of these amazing people and a new name for the place where they lived, Patagonia. This journey dates from 1519 to 1522, and that is when the drawings of giants in this region began to appear on the maps. Public interest in the Patagonian giants was incredibly high, and many researchers wanted to verify Pigafetta's words, and also explored the land of the Big Feet. Subsequent travelers measured the height of the Patagonians. Researchers have written that they range in height from 6 to 10 feet. But Sir Francis Drake, an English captain and explorer, changed all that. He also encountered giants during his 1577 to 1580 voyage around the world, although their description differed from that from the chronicler Magellan. Magellan was not altogether deceived in naming these giants, for they generally differ from the common sort of man both in stature, bigness, and strength of body, as also in the hideousness of their voices. But they are nothing so monstrous and giant-like as they were represented, there being some Englishmen as tall as the highest we could see. But peradventure, the Spaniards did not think that ever any Englishmen would come hither to reprove them, and therefore might presume the more boldly to lie. It is impossible to say for certain whether Francis Drake encountered the wrong tribe or the travelers before him, like Fernand Magellan himself, simply exaggerated the height of the natives. Later, in 1766, Captain John Byron, the poet's grandfather, also sailed around the world, and a story spread about the crew encountering huge 9-foot giants. Rumors spread furiously across Europe, and the line between fact and fiction became increasingly blurred. There was a fierce debate between the French and British scientists. The French believed that the British were supporting the case for the existence of giants as a smokescreen for an attack on French territories in the New World. The French explorer Louis-Antoine Bougainville reported that the tallest Patagonian he met was only 5 feet 9 inches, and later, in 1773, there was an official account of this in Byron's Journey. In fact, the so-called giants were only 4 inches taller than the tallest members of his crew. But if you ask, could these giants have existed in South America? Scientists would answer, yes. After all, we have the example of the Pygmy tribe, living in the equatorial forests of Africa. On average, they are 3 to 4 feet tall. They are roughly up to the chest of an average-sized European. The evolution of these people was different from that of other Africans and Europeans. They always lived in the rainforest, and they didn't need to be tall. Perhaps the giants were also a tribe in which the gene of gigantism was passed down from generation to generation. And perhaps the tall stature and large build of that region in South America was a very important part of natural selection, and the women of the tribe chose only the largest men to continue the family line. After all, even now we work with similar methods in agriculture. In this manner, people made huge draft horses and miniature ponies. Selection is an amazing science. But is it possible to live with such tall stature? It would be difficult, but not impossible, as there was a man in our recent history named Robert Wadlow, who was officially considered the tallest man in the world. He was 8 feet and 11 inches tall. Robert's large size and continued growth as an adult was caused by hypertrophy of his pituitary gland, resulting in abnormally high levels of growth hormone. Even by the time he died, there was no sign that his growth was over. He lived for 22 years. Eventually, this tribe might have become easy prey for other, more nimble and smaller people, who wiped out all members of the giant species. After all, South American history already contains records of people coming from Eurasia to North America, and then to South America, who wiped out all the megafauna of the continent, like the giant sloth and the American mastodon. But unlike huge animals, we did not find traces of giant people. If you want to see a video of how humans exterminated the megafauna of Australia, Oceania, and both Americas, post in the comments below. We have a lot of stories to tell. So far, people have found no proof of Magellan's accounts. The official version of scholars believes that the Patagonians were members of the local Welsh tribe, which means ferocious people. They were known to be taller than the average European, about 5 feet tall. We should not forget about the fact that in the 16th century, the height of Europeans was lower than that of their contemporaries. That is why even a 6-foot man might as well have seemed like a giant to the 16th century Portuguese. But perhaps one day we will find the remains of a giant in Patagonia, and we would see that Magellan was right. What do you think? Did giants exist? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and like our video. We upload videos every week.